All right, if everybody can have a seat, we can get things moving. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first official caucus of the new Common Council session. I'm going to have the clerk go ahead and call the roll.
Adams. Anane. Valorant. Brody.
Here.
Farrell.
Here.
Flynn.
Here.
Hoey.
Present.
Johnson. Jones.
Present.
Keegan.
Here.
Lumpkin.
Present.
Powell. Robinson is absent. Williamson.
Present.
Zamer's absent. That is 10 present. We're also joined by Council President Kelly Kimbrough, City Clerk Shaniqua Jackson, Assistant Corporation Counsel Martha Moskowitz, Research Counsel Robert Wenner, Legislative Director Brian Jimenez, Junior Policy Analyst Alyssa Kamara, Junior Legislative Aide Carly Johnson, and 9th Ward Intern Ariana Costello.
Thank you so much. And Martha is a newer face to us. So Martha, if you just want to say hi, we'll be seeing her from Corporation Council. So for our newer members, and we will be going through after we're done with caucus, newer members will be staying. We'll have a more in-depth running through of things. But basically, when we have caucus, this is the time that we go through the agenda. We have longer discussions because this is our longer caucus. There is a brief caucus before every council meeting, but this is the time that when we go through, if anybody has questions on legislation, ideally we'll have worked through our questions as we go through the committee process, but sometimes there might be others that come up at this stage. So we'll go through the agenda. It's also an opportunity for, sometimes we'll have a commissioner come in, or sometimes there's something that has come up that leadership will ask somebody from the administration or somebody from the city to come in and talk to us about it as a body. Usually if there's something content specific, it will go to that specific committee, but depending on what it is, for example, we've had the police chief come in. If there's been an issue in the community, the police chief will come in and address all of council, but then a longer conversation will happen at a public safety committee meeting. We also, just as a reminder, council meetings are the first and third Mondays. We have our meeting schedule right here. First and third Mondays of every month, with the exception of if there is a Monday where there's a holiday, and we have a perfect example of this Monday, the council meeting is then on that following Thursday. We also in the summer have gone down, this past summer we went down to one meeting for July and one meeting for August. It worked out okay. We'll see if it works. It depends on things. And I don't know if that's reflected in our calendar, but that is something. It's nice for council members to actually plan time to go on vacation. It's a little hard to go on vacation when you're in 4 meetings a month, because we have caucus the Wednesday before our Monday meetings. We also, it also allows us to spend more time in our actual wards, because a lot of times in the summers there's block parties, different things like that, which make it a little bit hard to juggle that number of meetings. But if there's a lot of business that we need to attend to, obviously that might need to change. So with that said, we can go through the agenda. We will have the January 5th, 2026 minutes to go through, I believe. Local laws, there'll be a local law from Councilmember Zamer, which will go to Finance. And I don't know if Councilmember Keegan, who is our new Finance Chair, wanted to speak on that.
Yeah, actually, I spoke with Deb earlier today. She unfortunately is out of town, so she was unable to speak about this evening, but this should be relatively self-explanatory. The income eligibility requirements for STAR exemptions were increased by the state under real property law. However, we have to have local designating legislation in order for our seniors to be able to opt into that expanded STAR credit. And that is what this bill does. You can see the eligibility requirements and how much it is offset laid out in the bill. And hopefully there'll be no issues in getting this through.
And it is on a timetable. We have to pass it by March 1st, I believe.
Correct. I mean, I would imagine with the bills that are coming in, we're going to try and organize a finance meeting sooner rather than later, so that we can have these addressed and out of committee for our meetings in February.
Excellent. So that is why we wanted to introduce it to majority consent, so it did have the opportunity to go through the committee process. We do not have any ordinances that are introduced. Under resolutions introduced, Resolution 2-1226R by Councilmember Zamer. That is something that we will be looking to vote on. That's a resolution to affirm our commitment to sustainability through the reduction of paper for its meetings. Are there anybody that would like to be co-sponsors on that?
What?
The next few resolutions will be going to committee, so we have a resolution of the Common Council confirming the appointment of Miriam Dixon as the Commissioner of Administrative Services. That's Resolution 3-1226R. That will go to Council Operations and Ethics. The Council does go through an approval process for commissioners. What we do with that is, once we get the paperwork, there is a timeline that I believe is 45 days that we have to act within. Once we get the paperwork, we introduce it, and then it's put to the committee that has the most familiarity with that subject area. So I guess the most logical example would be the police chief would go to public safety, things like that. So the committees are on your desk. They will be made public. And every council member is able to go to every committee meeting and participate. Obviously, the people in the committee are the only ones that can vote on passing something through that committee, but the most important vote is the vote that we take on the floor. So something that moves through the committee whether or not you vote on that, what really passes that piece into law is your vote on the floor. So as we move through and have the commissioners go to the specific committee meetings, that's the time that I would really recommend we'll have the most time for questions. We do usually have them come into caucus too. That's not something that is always able to work out, and it's also not something that you would have this same time to really ask questions. So if there is an area that you would like to ask a lot of questions on and you don't happen to be on that committee, definitely recommend going to that committee meeting so we can really dig in and take the time to ask the questions that we might not have on a caucus evening. Councilmember Keegan?
I just wanted to add, since I know we're doing orientation tonight, that would stand for any piece of legislation that members have concerns about, and that committee meetings are really where the debate and the discussion happens on a particular bill. And if you're looking for amendments, the time to do it is in committee. It's not going to happen on the floor. By the time legislation comes to the floor for a vote, we typically know whether it's going to pass or whether it's going to fail. So the work really happens in the committee. If you cannot make a committee meeting, oftentimes, like for example myself, what I've done in the past is submit a memo to the committee chair outlining whatever my concerns are or whatever my questions are, and asking that the committee chair make sure that those get addressed during that meeting and discussion of the particular bill.
Just to add on to that, any amendments that do happen just need to be confirmed, can only really be confirmed on the floor. So the committee would review it as you'd mentioned, suggest amendments. If those are accepted and passed out, the council as a whole has to approve of those amendments, but there isn't really much discussion on it.
So now, moving on to the next piece, Resolution 41226R, that we have several different salary totals that will be going to finance. So this one is changing the authorized positions included in the 2026 city budget, which will affect a salary rate or salary total. The next one, 51226R, a resolution approving a transfer of budgeted funds in the 2026 budget, which will affect salary rate and salary total. Those will both be going to finance. And then the next resolution, Resolution 61226R by Councilmember Flynn, is a street renaming for the Larson family. And Councilmember Flynn, did this go through the General Services Committee?
Yeah, it already got approved through the General Services Committee, but due to we're in another session, we have to redo it again.
I will say, I think it is something that, oh no, we actually do have to put it through again. So we will be putting that through General Services again. The auditor also asked for some changes in salaries. So that will be MC'd. That's at the bottom of your, it's like the last piece of paper there. It's not actually part of the packet. It will be, but it was a later add. So that's Resolution 71226R, and that will also be going to Finance. And that way, all of them can be discussed in the context of the budget. Councilmember Keegan?
Just a quick question on the MC for the auditor's office. Do we have a true justification for needing to MC that legislation? And why can't we to the next meeting?
We could potentially have it wait till the next meeting. It was something, the main reason I wanted to MC it was so that it could be part of that one Finance Committee meeting. And allow there to be time for a fuller discussion, but it does not actually need to do that, especially if you as Finance Chair would prefer us to wait until the next council meeting, we can, but I figured it would be better to have it be part of that whole discussion.
I personally don't care. I just want to speak consistent in what we allow to MC and what we don't. And typically the justification for MC is that, like, Councilmember Zamer's local law has a confined timing constraint, and therefore the justification is there to get this on the docket, whereas
I completely agree. Usually the reason why we would have last minute MCs is different, I think, hiccups between Corp Counsel's office and our office, and hopefully that will not happen. In this situation, and I would say to all new members, it is absolutely the preference to not have to MC something. It is preferred to allow people time to, because the public, there are people of the public that will actually go through our agendas and read through them. When something is MC'd, it's not fully shared in the same way. In this situation, because I think it's very important for us to discuss, this isn't an orthodox thing. Usually we don't have salary changes outside of the budget, and I would really like them to be looked at together. So even though I agree this is not necessarily a timeline thing, I do think when it comes to something as unorthodox as this, if we can keep them together, especially in one agenda, so that they can be found together by people, I think that that's actually a good thing. But point well taken. Thank you. So those are the main pieces of the agenda. We will also be voting on the majority whip position, which we created last time. We'll be going through that in a similar way. Bobby, do you want to do a quick reminder, as I am not?
Yeah, absolutely. When we reach that point in the agenda, which will probably be under resolutions, because it'll be a resolution affirming it, President Kimbrough will call for nominations. We can have as many nominations as anyone is interested in making. Each nomination requires a second. At that point, we'll hear from each of the individuals nominated, as well as anybody else who would like to contribute, although last time there wasn't any. Importantly, you should only plan on voting for one of the people who is nominated. That's because if the first person who is up for a vote receives a majority, that will be the person that becomes whip. None of the other nominations will be voted on. So only intend on voting for one person. Decide who that is in advance of any of the votes, and if at the end of the first round of votes we don't have anyone with the majority, then it will go back to nominations and we can start again. We'll continue the discussion until someone is elected or the body votes to move on from the process.
Thank you very much. A quick note that we do get business cards, and there will also be a brochure that is printed up now that we have our committee structure set and things like that. All of that should be coming together soon, so we will have those in the near future. And then just a note, before caucus leadership meets with the mayor's office, and then at caucus, we always discuss what happened in that leadership meeting. Members are always encouraged to, if there's anything that you think should be brought up, we regularly bring up issues that members are dealing with their constituencies, things like that. Obviously, if it's very specific to your ward, like a sidewalk needs fixing, something like that, that's not really necessarily something we would bring up to the mayor. That's something we would want to make sure that we're going through the process. But there are sometimes things that happen in members' wards, or an initiative that a member has that, bless you, that is more citywide that we will absolutely bring up and is something we really like to hear about, because we are one of a body and everyone's eyes, ears, and voices matter. So they brought up the budget amendments. Their intent is that the budget amendments are all budget neutral. We also discussed having the 2 commissioners for the 2 departments. So Parks and Workforce Development have actually always been separate departments. It's always a weird thing when I was a new council member and we would have these kind of 2 separate things presented together on the same night, because of the big focus of the Players Administration on both workforce development and parks, but really to make sure that there is the leadership needed for both of these important positions. There's been a decision to have 2 commissioners for those. So that's something that will be discussed as we go through the process for confirming. We don't need to split it apart. I've gotten questions about, do we need to split these, what do we do to split these departments apart? We don't need to. They've always been split apart. The history is that during the Jennings administration, he had somebody that was doing one that he wanted to do the other job too, and it just kind of continued on from there. My own personal take on it, it never fully made sense to me why we had workforce development going with parks. But, things happen, and So that will certainly be something that we're looking at. One of the pieces that we discussed was having, because really separating the two departments and giving them their own identity, to have some of those workforce development pieces go to human rights and human resources as opposed to parks as it would in the past. Because it just makes a lot more sense to have workforce development go to human rights and human resources than it would necessarily to go to parks. So that's something that we will be looking to shift in our own way of identifying which legislation would go to which committees. And those were the main things that we discussed. So does anybody have any questions? Another thing is, obviously at the end of council meetings, we do have a section called miscellaneous if anybody wants to bring up anything. Really the ideal time to talk about things where you can have a discussion is at caucus. So if you have anything that you wanted to talk about, maybe there's an event going on, maybe there's an issue that's happening with you that you'd like to discuss. Sometimes committee chairs like to have an opportunity to talk about something that is happening in their committee to the full body. We encourage all of that. So are there any questions? Councilmember Hoey, or statements? Or?
We had 2 members join us, so I just want to make sure to get.
Oh, yes, yes. Yes, we've had
Adams.
Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Powell, and Councilmember Adams join us since the roll was taken.
And I got one more thing. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just want to let you know, for the street namings, just so everybody knows, you get 2 per year, so be very selective. I just want people to know that it's in the law. It's legislation that every council member gets to do 2 street namings a year.
2 per ward?
Yes, you get to do 2 a year.
So we get 30 street namings a year?
Yeah, you
Right,
can, you're right.
The council gets 30 street namings.
You don't have to, you also don't have to do any, it is not, my ward doesn't really have many businesses, so I have not had any street renamings, so, you know,
Yeah, I
you
just want to
can
let the
do
council members
2
know
a year,
that.
but you
so.
don't have to do any. Councilmember Hoey?
Yeah, I wanted to find, just to refresh us, because I don't, can you talk about, like, if you're sick, how you can, do we still have that capability of zooming into a meeting? Can you talk about that?
So the remote access, and a lot of this, the nuance of the rules, I would love if Shaniqua might have this best, but it could be Bobby. That's going to, do you mind mentioning it now? Because I don't know that all members can stay for orientation, because I don't think we're broadcasting it. Or, I mean,
So I can pull up the code. We did codify it. I believe that was one of Keegan's laws, ordinances, a couple years ago. But the process is generally, you would let leadership know that you're unable to make it, some extraordinary circumstances occurred, or you need to go take care of immediate family, that sort of thing. Leadership will let us know that you are still hoping to participate remotely, and then we would set up a Zoom link. We would need to know this in advance. We send out the agendas 10 days, 13 days before the regular meetings, and we need to notice the fact that we're having this meeting conducted with video conferencing. So we would need to know pretty far in advance that you aren't going to be able to make it, but you still want to participate. I think that's the bulk of it.
yeah, it's usually something that's done where if you had, so if somebody has surgery, something like that, where you know that you're not going to be there. If you have the flu, you should just get better. It's okay.
You also, just key point, you do not count for quorum. We still need 8 individuals in this chambers for any business to be conducted. But as far as I can recall, and please correct me, attorneys, you do still have a vote. You also need to make sure that you are on screen present the entire time of the meeting. You do not count as participating if you're not on screen.
That's correct. 8 members in chamber to count for an in-person quorum to initiate business, after which anyone who is video calling in, as long as they are visible on screen, mics on for the duration of the meeting, will count for a vote. But if quorum ever drops below 8 people in the same room, the meeting will end.
For the record, so you can't call in on a Zoom. You have to be video. Right.
I believe that's correct, yes. And not per Albany Code exclusively, but per New York State law.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe open meeting specifies you'd need to participate as basically anybody else, and you'd need to be seen. Never mind, if somebody AI generated your voice, how would we really know, you know?
Oh my gosh.
And it's also something that has to be an extenuating circumstance. So if you happen to be traveling if you're on vacation, that would not qualify. Traveling for work normally does not qualify. It really is something where if you had surgery or some sort of long-term reason that you are physically unable to come to chambers. Any other questions? Well, then we can finish caucus and move on to our new council member orientation. So we will stop the recording. I do believe, and before we move off, because we're not talking about official business but processes, council members could stay, correct? I'm asking either attorney really.
Yes, anyone who's interested in staying for orientation is welcome to stay. It's not going to be broadcast because at no point will anyone be deliberating on any official business, and no public matters will be discussed. It's important that we maintain an understanding around that, because if we deliberate on any business, it has to become a public meeting again. But no, everything that's going to be discussed there is purely procedural, personnel matters, introducing people to staff, other things along those lines.
And I would just note for returning council members, you are also under no obligation to stay. If you would like to go home and actually have dinner with your family, you should. So can I get a motion to adjourn caucus? I'm sorry.
Prior to adjourning, I just wanted to remind council members of our Black History Month celebration. I know that I've been bombarding some of us with emails and calls, but our event is going to be happening on February 6th here in City Hall at 6 p.m. Generally, this event has every council member nominate a Black person from their ward for an award. I still need nominees from most of the council members. Please do, if you're having any barriers to finding a nominee, touch base with me and we'll be able to work through any of the details. Thanks.
Hi, yeah, I just have a question for you. Is there any issue with nominating somebody that, like, I'm new and I don't know who in previous years was recognized?
I can provide you a list of everybody who's been recognized since the start of the event.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.